Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for October 8th, 2024. First off, I need to apologize. There is going to be some background noise. I'm getting some work done on my house, so just can't be avoided. Let's get started. The current stats are in, and in the Mormon Church's latest General Conference, which took place Saturday and Sunday of this past weekend, speakers quoted Joseph Smith 9 times, Jesus Christ 55 times, and the current church prophet Russell M. Nelson 58 times. This, my friends, is why it's sometimes difficult to understand who it is that they worship. Next, we will go to KSL.com. It's been 194 years since the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was organized on April 6, 1830. Since then, the semi-annual General Conference meetings of the Church have become some of the most sacred and highly anticipated events of the year for many Latter-day Saints. The opportunity to hear from church leaders, 15 of which members of the Church sustain as prophets, seers, and revelators, is an experience that members ultimately cherish and look forward to. Over the years, there have been some unforgettable announcements and events that have occurred during the General Conference sessions of the Church. Here are 17 of the most memorable. 2018 2-hour church block announced. Having been on a 3-hour meeting block for several decades, the announcement of a 2-hour block took many by surprise. In conjunction with the emphasis on the Church being a home-centered, church-supported experience, the shortened Sunday worship schedule was a welcome adjustment to better enable more home-centered worship, teaching, and learning. 2012 missionary age change. For years, the age at which young men and women were eligible for missions was 19 for men and 21 for women. In 2012, President Thomas S. Monson announced that the eligible age would be lowered to 18 for men and 19 for women. 2008, Rome, Italy temple announced. Long the capital of traditional Christianity, the announcement by President Thomas S. Monson that a temple would be constructed not far from the Vatican was monumental and a mark of how much the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had grown. 2008, President Thomas S. Monson wiggles his ears. Let's see it.
And then I wiggled my ears.
2007, Elder Russell M. Nelson studies Elder Joseph B. Wirthlin. In one of his last talks, Elder Joseph B. Wirthlin began to shake uncontrollably. In a true act of Christ-like compassion, Elder Russell M. Nelson gracefully stood behind him and steadied him until he finished his talk. 2004, Preach My Gospel was announced. And what the Church said is the most complete orchestrated effort in the history of the Church to unify the missionary effort, the Preach My Gospel Manual on Missionary Work was announced. 2003, Elder David B. Haight waved to the audience. Unable to speak due to illness, Elder Haight could not refuse the opportunity to wave to the congregation. He did, and while waving said, "I'm waving." 2001, Perpetual Education Fund announced. President Hinckley announced a new program to help members in developing countries obtain a loan for gaining an education. 2000, Conference Center dedicated. Seating 21,000 people, the new Conference Center was larger than life, significantly more than the previous conference location, the Salt Lake Tabernacle. 1999, Nauvoo, Illinois Temple reconstruction announced. In a historic announcement, President Gordon B. Hinckley announced that the Nauvoo Temple would be rebuilt and that architects were already working on the project, thanks in part to some significant donations from members of the Church. The temple was dedicated by President Hinckley in 2002. 1985, Elder Bruce R. McConkie gives his final testimony. No one will forget Elder McConkie's last public testimony, The Purifying Power of Gethsemane. Not only was it a powerful witness of Jesus Christ, but it also was the final seal on a dedicated disciple's path. Elder McConkie died about 2 weeks after this talk was given. 1982, the Book of Mormon's subtitle announced. The Book of Mormon up until 1982 did not have the subtitle. To clarify and emphasize its message, Elder Boyd K. Packer announced in General Conference that the book would now be known as the Book of Mormon, Another Testament of Jesus Christ. 1980, Church reestablishment televised during New York Conference session. In a historic event, the Church's General Conference session was broadcast from one of the most important locations in the Church's history, Fayette, New York. 1978, LeGrand Richards has the red button telling him he's overtime. In one of the more humorous events in General Conference history, the verbose Elder LeGrand Richards went overtime and the red button on the podium was illuminated. He stopped mid-sentence, turned to President Spencer W. Kimball and asked if he was overtime. 1978, Official Declaration 2 presented to the Church. In one of the more historically significant moments in Church history, President Spencer W. Kimball shared and announced the revelation, now known and published as Official Declaration 2, that stated that all worthy male members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints could be ordained to the priesthood without regard to race or color. 1949, the first televised General Conference of the Church. It was only 75 years ago the General Conference was first televised, now can be found live worldwide through satellite streaming and other broadcast services. 1856, Brigham Young sends rescue parties to stranded handcart companies. Speaking to his indomitable practicality, President Brigham Young all but canceled the conference in an urgent response to helping saints stranded on the plains in the bitter cold and treacherous weather. He said, "That is my religion, that is the dictation of the Holy Ghost that I possess. It is to save the people. I will tell you that your faith, religion, and profession of religion will never save one soul of you in the celestial kingdom of our God unless you carry out just such principles as I am now teaching you. Go and bring in those people now on the plains." Now we will go to Reddit for some information about the saints in Brazil. It says there are more than 1 million Mormons missing in Brazil. As of October 2018, the LDS Church membership records reported 1,383,799 members in Brazil. The 2020 Brazilian census, though, reported 226,509 self-identifying Mormons. Were they abducted, translated, embarrassed, never existed? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And now to the Salt Lake Tribune for an article that says, "Get ready, President Russell M. Nelson, the 100-year-old leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, told a global audience Sunday, the Savior is coming. That's why the faith's temple building pace is so frenzied," he said in a recorded message at the church's 194th semi-annual General Conference. "The Lord is indeed hastening his work." In his sermon, Nelson, who attended 2 of the 5 sessions at the conference center in downtown Salt Lake City, announced 17 more temples to be built around the world, including another in Utah. Since becoming president of the 7.2 million member faith in 2018, Nelson has announced 185, or more than half, of the church's 367 planned or existing temples. "Participating in temple ceremonies is meant to help prepare the faithful for Christ's return," he said. "Every sincere seeker of Jesus Christ will find him in the temple. You will feel his mercy. You will find answers to your most vexing questions. You will better comprehend the joy of his gospel." And now to a bit of history that was brought to my attention yesterday by a listener. Let's talk about the Harrison, New York Temple. Never heard of it? Here's why. On September 30th, 1995, during the priesthood session of General Conference, President Gordon B. Hinckley announced that plans for a regional temple in Hartford, Connecticut, which would serve the New York and New England areas of the United States, had been replaced with plans for 2 temples for the region in Boston, Massachusetts, and White Plains, New York, later designated Harrison, New York in October 1999. In other words, said President Hinckley, there will be 2 temples to serve the needs of the people where originally it was planned that one would do. On March 8th, 1996, the church purchased a beautifully wooded 24-acre site for the temple at the highly accessible intersection of Interstate 287 and Hutchinson River Parkway. The location of the site in Harrison was reflected in a name change made during a major renaming of many of the church's temples to a uniform guideline in October 1999, making the White Plains, New York Temple the Harrison, New York Temple. Joseph Cannella chaired the Harrison Planning Board when the church submitted its plan for the temple. He takes credit for the church scaling down its project from 89,700 square feet to 56,000 square feet, removing a 3rd floor, eliminating 1 steeple and 4 spires, swapping the 159-foot main spire for a 115-foot single spire, reducing the number of parking spaces, diminishing the proposed floodlighting, and agreeing to no visitors center, family history center, or pageant on the temple grounds. Revised plans called for a 44-foot high temple, requiring the church to make application for a variance to the 30-foot height limit imposed on the residences of that neighborhood. The request came before the Harrison Zoning Board of Appeals on Thursday, September 28, 2000. In a 5-2 vote, the board denied the church its variance, though the chairman suggested an alternative solution may be viable. While the church met the ruling with disappointment, dozens of residents who staunchly opposed the building applauded the decision. On March 10, 2001, New York State Supreme Court Justice Peter Levitt overturned the decision of the Harrison Board of Appeals, ordering a variance to be issued to allow construction of the temple. The church's victory was short-lived, however, as the board countered by filing its own appeal. Despite the pending lawsuit, the church attended a public meeting with the Harrison Town Board on June 11, 2001, requesting a special exemption permit, which specifies how the temple will be used. Overwhelming opposition was expressed by neighbors, including concerns over traffic, size of the building, height of the steeple, and nighttime floodlighting of the exterior. This sounds all so familiar. The town meeting launched 8 months of wrangling between the church and residents in the form of public hearings, 4 traffic studies, and environmental reports. Having exhausted its administrative options after its numerous concessions, the church was left with no option but to file suit on December 17, 2001, accusing the town of infringing on freedom of religion and assembly. The spirit of compromise filled the members of the Harrison Town Board, who unanimously voted on April 30, 2002 to approve a proposed settlement with the church when it became clear that the town would likely lose in court and spend millions of dollars if legal action were pursued. The agreement resulted in numerous additional concessions by the church, including reducing the building from 56,000 square feet to 28,400 square feet, dropping the number of seats from 200 to 100, lowering the height of the building from 44.7 feet to 34 feet, and steeple from 115 feet to 105 feet, trimming the number of parking spaces from 198 to 135, paying for any damage to Kenilworth Road caused by construction, and refraining from building anything else on the property for 15 years after the temple opened. In August 2002, the church announced its plans to build the Manhattan, New York temple inside an existing church-owned building. Though the 7-year dispute in Harrison contributed to the decision, significant membership growth in the city was emphasized, as explained by Stake President Brent Belknap. Growth in the 5 boroughs has been so great that the logic of having a temple within easy access to public transportation in the heart of the city makes far more eminent sense. By January 2004, the church had not indicated how the opening of the Manhattan Temple later that year may affect its decision to build in Harrison. But James Stout, a White Plains lawyer representing the church, told the Journal News it will be built. He explained that the church was working to connect the property to a sewer line on the other side of Hutchinson River Parkway, a complex, time-consuming project that had to be completed before the town would be issuing a building permit. Once completed, the church would move on to the next phase of construction, he said. After the Manhattan Temple opened, however, activity at the Harrison site died down. By 2006, the Harrison, New York temple had been quietly removed from the church's official list of announced temples. The decision to build a temple on this site would constitute a new announcement. And last, we will finish with this graphic that seems very appropriate when it comes to the Mormon Church. It says, "Don't fight hate with hate" is an example of subtle gaslighting, where our legitimate hurt and anger at the injustices we suffer is being equated to the bigotry and abuse of our oppressors. Being angry doesn't mean you are being hateful. It means you love yourself enough to get upset at your own mistreatment. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.